According to reports, Nike is set to launch a gender-inclusive clothing line for children this summer called Kids One Fit. The Daily Wire obtained leaked internal emails from the athletic wear giant that disclosed it's part of a pride campaign titled Together We Are Undeniable, spearheaded by Nike United Pride. President Biden slammed the rise in anti-LGBTQ+ laws that are sweeping Republican legislators across the country. Here are a few remarks from Biden yesterday at his press conference with British Prime Minister Rishi Sunak. Let's watch.
These are our kids. These are our neighbors. It's cruel and it's callous. Not somebody else's kids. They're all our kids. They're the kids, and our children are the kite strings that hold our national ambitions aloft.
The White House unveiled measures yesterday in response to numerous GOP-led bills banning child gender transitions and books showing sexually explicit material. What do you think about Biden's comment that the kids are our kids? It's not a very politically popular message. It basically lost Terry McAuliffe the governor's race in Virginia.
Yeah, these are our kids. It's very...
As he sniffs one's hair.
Yeah, Biden is not the best speaker. We know this very well. I think that a better message from a president of the United States would be, we have a lot of freedoms and rights guaranteed by the Constitution. Are you infringing on a family's right to raise their child by denying them medical care that they want their kid to have or health care that they want their kid to have? I don't think that would be extremely controversial, and it might be better messaging than saying your kids are my kids too, they're all our children and we should protect them, and that's why I'm against these laws. I think it's really a bad message from Biden. It doesn't seem like one that was even fleshed out by a team.
Yeah, it's not good. Your message would definitely probably be more palatable to a lot of people who are not as aggressive on the trans stuff as maybe I am or other conservatives are. But this is like constant messaging from the Democrats that I don't understand why they keep saying it. I mean, Terry McAuliffe saying that parents shouldn't decide what kids learn in school. You have Biden saying these are our kids. I think Karine Jean-Pierre said something similar in a recent press briefing at the White House. And there's a difference between saying that people should be able to have help from the community that they choose to help raise their kids, right? It definitely is a community effort in some cases to help raise kids, whether that's your extended family helping you out, daycare, etc. But the idea that the government owns kids is a fundamentally creepy concept for most Americans, and they don't want people like Joe Biden or other members of the Biden administration having so much say in their decisions related to their child.
Yeah, I think that's exactly why some families don't like these bills. I don't think it should be a problem. If there's a family, they're raising a child, and the child says to them, I think maybe this should be a part of it, that it's definitely coming from the child, which I can't imagine a scenario where there's ever a parent that says we're gonna go through a gender transition where the child themselves doesn't want it. However, a minor can't make big medical decisions like that for themselves in the eyes of the law. The parent needs to be involved. That makes sense. I think there should be nothing wrong with putting a child on puberty blockers if they feel that they don't identify with their sex assigned at birth. There might be some families who say, I'm really against that. I think even if I have a child who says to me that they don't feel like they identify with their sex assigned at birth, I will not be pursuing any kind of gender affirming care or gender transition care from a healthcare professional. We're not going to be doing any of that. Okay, that's your right as a parent. Do I agree with it? Would I do it for my own child? No, but it's your right as a parent. I think that's fair. And to pass laws that deny people from getting that care for their child, I think is an overstep of government.
Oh, well, I think your position is much more reasonable than a lot of the left, which has actually taken children away from parents who refuse to do what's called gender-affirming treatments or child sex transitions. But I think that these things are child abuse for a couple of reasons. It is very common that parents basically project their feelings about the kid's gender onto them. About 50% of moms of sons who say that they identify as girls have borderline personality disorders. In addition, about 80% of kids who say that they identify as a member of the opposite sex end up growing out of their gender dysphoria by adulthood. So if we put them on this medication that has long-lasting, irreversible consequences, you're basically not giving them the opportunity to come to terms conforms with the body that they were born in. Not to mention the fact that there's a study from Stanford that found that gender hormone therapy does not actually reduce suicidality, depression, or anxiety in children who get on it who suffer from gender dysphoria. So not only do these treatments not work, but they also have permanent consequences for children, whether it's sterilization, brittle bone syndrome, or mental fog and brain development issues that come from transitioning from puberty blockers to hormone therapy.
What do you make? I want to go back to the Nike scenario. Something you said struck a chord with me. I remember being a young girl and wearing the pink, wearing the frills. Every young girl that grew up in like the early 2000s and 90s, I think, had these fuzzy white socks that were so itchy, and they had the frills around them, and I hated them. They were the worst. And I was like, why do I have to wear this dress and these stockings? And the boys are just, they're in pants with an elastic band. It seems so much more comfortable. And it was always, you have to be a lady. And so I think that the teaching of gender from a very young age, long before puberty, was honestly detrimental to me and figuring out who I was and what I liked and how I wanted to dress just as a person. And I'm a very feminine person, and still that drove me crazy as a child. So I really like that Nike's like, hey, you guys are just kids. Your bodies are basically the same. We'll offer different sizes, different colors. Why is kids' clothing divided by gender? I think for me, that was very confusing. And something you said about parents imposing gender identity onto their child. You were describing a case where it was the sex assigned at birth was male, and they ended up transitioning. But I think any kind of imposition of gender expectations on a child is detrimental, to be honest.
Well, it's an important point because it kind of gets at the heart of a lot of the teaching about trans kids, which is if you read medical lectures, for example, I have a syllabus from Georgetown Medical Center, the university hospital. And they basically say that early signs that your kid may be transgender is that they wear clothing or play with toys that don't match the gender binary, or basically what they're expected to play with. So if a boy is playing with Barbie dolls, that could be an indication that the child may have been born in the wrong body. And I think that's really damaging because kids should be able to experiment a little bit. And just because a girl likes to wear boy clothing doesn't necessarily mean that they're going to end up having gender dysphoria. And I think it can actually cause feelings of gender dysphoria when we impose that strict idea of gender roles and clothing associated with gender. And so I don't have a problem with gender-inclusive clothing on its face when it's marketed in a sense that it is related to transgenderism. I think that only confuses kids about what they're supposed to be even more. And kids don't have the ability to understand a complex idea of gender roles the way that adults do. And so when you give them the idea that if they don't conform to wearing skirts or dresses all the time, that they might be a member of the opposite sex, I think that's damaging, and it does kind of convince some kids that they might be better off going through a gender transition when they might not have necessarily had any issues with their gender prior.
Yeah, I think the parents' oftentimes number one concern is making a mistake and messing their child up and being the person that traumatizes their child in any way. And I think having a more loose understanding of gender for all children and saying you want to play with this, you want to dress up like this, not imposing any kind of gender norms upon your children, I think is a pretty good way to raise your kids and to avoid that, rather than, I think, taking advice that if you have a girl, she wants to play with toy trucks and dinosaurs, that maybe she's a boy. Yeah, I don't agree with that.
Yeah,
hopefully
you can be a girl who likes non-girly things, and that doesn't necessarily mean you have to be medicalized for it.
Yeah, I don't think we're getting transition surgeries based off of just that alone. That would be very scary, and I understand the caution around that, but we're going to have to leave it there. We love this topic every time we discuss it. More rising after this.